Good morning, Mrs. Jihan.
Good morning.
I've heard that you graduated BS Economics
Mm-mm.
at UPD, and how helpful was your course in letting you attain your job at the Deutsche Bank?
Okay. Perhaps let me give you first a brief background of what I did in Deutsche Bank. When I moved to Deutsche Bank, at that time, this investment bank decided to take advantage of the BPO trend, wherein a lot of companies were outsourcing some of their functions to lower cost countries like the Philippines. But for Deutsche Bank, being a bank, it was a sort of a new model because they haven't really tried this. So what they did was their financial operations. They moved it to the Philippines and to take advantage of the the higher educational level of the people, and then they noticed that we have relatively high levels of graduates in accountancy, economics, and those financially related courses. So when I joined Deutsche Bank, they formed this company like a local service center. They call the program Smart Sourcing. So they formed Deutsche Knowledge Services PTE Ltd. So that was the company I joined, and it's part of the the Deutsche Bank group of companies.
So, was that your first job?
No, my first job was with Phil Nippon Kyoei Corporation.
Um,
And the reason why I joined that company was when I graduated from the School of Economics, I wanted to do an economics related job. So this company advertised and said, willing to specialize in power economics. And then I saw the economics. That's it. so, so without thinking of anything else, I just went there and then did the interviews, and then I guess looking back, that was kind of a very naive move. Although I really appreciated my work experience there because I reported directly to the CEO. And this company, it's just a small firm, but it had many business interests. Like it was into power generation, manufacturing, cold storage, industrial trading, and so forth.
So, what was your job title there?
I was a corporate planning assistant.
Oh.
So technically, there was no corporate planning department. So the boss hired me, and I was the corporate planning department. I reported directly to the CEO, and he gave my first job there was to evaluate the financial models of the power plants, and then after getting some comfort, some level of comfort that I was already, familiar with the business. Whenever there's a project proposal, he would give me the task of doing the financials, like projecting the financials, and then eventually he gave me the job of doing the pricing, eventually the contracts, and eventually I also did the technical evaluation. It was kind of weird because I'm not an engineer, and usually I would go out and then meet with the VP for technical operations of companies, and we will be talking about power consumption, stuff like that, and then they'll say, you're an engineer. No, my background is economics. So, but economics helped me in a way. It gave me the fundamentals in how you evaluate project. Of course, we're taught about NPV, time value of money, scarcity of goods, trade-offs, opportunity costs. So those things you consider when you do project evaluation.
So, that job led you to the
Yes.
financial and banking sector?
Yes. It's kind of I like my first job because it allowed me to see like what's a business as a whole. Like how do you start a business? For example, when my boss decided to pursue the cold storage business, first thing that he wanted me to do was do a feasibility study. So I had to learn about cold storage, what was the impact for the economy as a whole, what was the prospects. I had to do market study, and then eventually I had to think about how to finance the project. So for me it was like a baby project, a baby for me. My boss took the risk, of course, and I did the I did the evaluation. It was a good learning experience, but then at some point I realized that because there was really no to be fair with my boss, he really mentored me in a sense that he allowed me to be exposed to a lot of things. Like when he's meeting with CEOs, like say for example of P&G, of big companies, he would bring me along, and that was a huge learning experience for me. But then at some point, I was looking for like detailed mentoring, like how do you actually do corporate planning? I mean, how do they do it outside? And I didn't get that because, of course, my boss was very busy, so he was a CEO. So at that time, I was thinking about, I thought that I think it would help me a lot if I could join a multinational organization so that I just have a feel of how are things usually done in bigger
Yes.
companies. So although I enjoyed that job, my job with Philmicon, I thought that it would help me a lot if I gain experience with multinational companies to to gain a global more global perspective.
Perspective.
And that's how I got to Deutsche Bank.
So, when in considering hiring people at Deutsche Bank, do they consider good grade manuscripts?
That's an interesting question.
Yes.
Because when they did the hiring, they still didn't know of what would be the exact mix of skills and background. So what they did, I think they just got like who are the most qualified people in the market. And to be honest, I really didn't think that I was one of them because when I joined my batch, we were like 20, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But when I joined my batch, the people who were with me, they were like, they had 10-year work experience, they had their masters in finance, they worked in banks, or they were like, some were like, they already had like a 10-year experience with banks, with BSP and other established banks. And I was like, when they asked me, so where are you from? I'm from this small company and I only have 2 years of work experience. So I really thought like, oh no, I'm at a disadvantage in terms of work experience and exposure to financial products because Deutsche Bank is an investment bank, so you have to be familiar with financial instruments, and I didn't have that. And unfortunately, it's not being taught in the School of Economics. I don't think it's being taught in the College of Business Administration either. I think you get it, maybe basic background, but you get like a comprehensive training when you get your master's in finance, which I didn't take until I quit my until after I quit my job in Deutsche Bank. So going back to your question, what were the qualifications? There were two foreigners who did the interviews, and before we did the interview, we were briefed by the local manager. Just told us you have to be honest. I think they were really just looking for people who were willing to take the risk, who were honest of what they know and what they don't know. Because when I went there and they started asking me about financial instruments, I just said, to be honest, I don't know anything about them. But if you give me the chance, I'm willing to learn.
And so they were just scouting for people who had new ideas.
Well, of course, first they wanted to get the banking experience, and then people with maybe in the business-related courses like business ad, accountancy, economics. So those were the basics. And then after that, they will look at the work experience. But then after that would be your, how they evaluate you during the interview. I think that was the clincher. Because a lot of people, according to the local manager, they had good background, but then when they went to the interview, they just, they couldn't answer, or they were too intimidated because the foreigners were interviewing. Or they were just bluffing their way around, like, yeah, I know this, I'm very good at Excel, and then when they start asking, so can you do a pivot table? No. So you really just have to be honest of what you know, and then just be confident, and if you don't know the answer, then you just say it, and then just give a good justification.
So when you worked there, you were first based in the Philippines?
Yes, yes. So we had like what was that, 1 month, 2 month training. So it was like a classroom training. So we go to the class, and then they will discuss what's a financial instrument, say what's an option, what's a stock, what are futures, and then after that we will have exams. So based on that, they will see if we're ready to be sent to the onshore locations. Onshore locations meaning the main trading centers of the bank, like in London or New York or in Australia, etc. So our first project was in London. So after that I was hired May, June, July. So May I was hired, and then July, yes. Okay. So the idea was, I'm not sure if you're familiar with investment banking. So it's like the bank gets gets funds from clients,
Uh-oh.
and then depending on what the clients prefer, they will trade according to those. Like for example, the clients prefer exposure in futures, so the bank will get the traders to execute those positions. So Deutsche Bank was doing that for a lot of clients for different locations, and we were assigned to the London traders. We call them traders. They're like the front office. They are the ones who are responsible for trading and for bringing in the money. So we were assigned to the controller department. So when we went to London, our job was to learn how they do product controlling and then bring it to Manila and start working from Manila. So now these traders, instead of talking to their London controllers, they will now be talking to us. And then the London controllers, they will just do quality checks, and eventually some of them will be fired to be replaced by us, because obviously our salaries were much lower than our London counterparts. So it was at first intimidating because, well, you work with foreigners, and then one thing we realized that Filipinos are generally shy, and we're not very direct. When we want to say something, we do a lot of things, or we say, it's not that direct. We're not like that. We're very sensitive. We think about, oh, what would they feel? But the foreigners, they're not like that.
They're just very
They're just direct. They tell you what they mean, and then if you get hurt, that's your problem. But this is what I mean. So you kind of have to adjust to that kind of environment. British, they're generally courteous, so it was good. But then when you deal with Americans, they're not so courteous.
So besides London, what are the other countries that you were assigned to?
So first I was sent to London for a 3-month training, and then I had to bring back the role to Manila. When we came back to Manila, so we have to do it, make sure that we are able to do it smoothly on a day-to-day basis. In addition to that, we were tasked to train, people who can backfill us. Say, for example, if I go on a leave, someone has to do the work for me, so I have to train. So I was able to train someone immediately, and then, luckily, well, I just say it was a blessing. Most of my colleagues were doing profit and loss controlling, meaning they are the ones checking the daily financials of how the traders are doing. I was assigned to do just a small book to do profit and loss controlling, but the bigger role that was given to me was looking after market risk. I'm not sure if you've heard of delta, gamma, vega risk. Maybe not. So if you have financial instruments, regulators will require the banks to always set aside like a capital, like a reserve, so that in case that position makes a huge loss, you will have some capital to cover for it. Now, how much capital to set aside for it is determined by what they call a value at risk measure. Now, value at risk measure is calculated using market risk exposure calculations. Like for example, say delta exposure, because we were dealing with derivatives. Derivatives are instruments that derive their value from another asset. Say for example, a stock future. So a stock future is another instrument. It's different from a stock. But the value of a stock future is derived from the value of the stock. So now, the price of this stock future is dependent on the movement of the stock, obviously. So we need to measure what's the relationship of that, how much. We need to quantify, like, if the stock increases by 2%, how much will the stock future price change? So that is the delta risk. So for example, a trader is holding, say, this much of stock futures. And say the risk manager says, I don't want delta exposure. So he will have to go to the market and calculate how much stocks will he need to short, meaning to sell, to cover his long stock futures position. So that's the basic idea in measuring risk, so that you know how much exposure you need to cover, so that if markets do not perform well, your ass is covered.
Was it so you were based in Tokyo?
This was still London. That's how I got to Tokyo.
Oh, I see.
Because the risk reporting part was only there were only, I think, 3 of us who did that role. And then among the 3 of us, the 2 were not able to train a backup yet. It was only me who was able to train a backup. So when the risk system of London was being rolled out to Tokyo, Tokyo said, we cannot use that because we don't have anyone here who knows how to use the system. So they were advised, oh, you go to Manila, they have users there. So they went to Manila, they checked the Manila office, and then they said, so who knows how to use the system? The system is called Risk Attribution Valuation Engine, RAVE. So there were only 3 of us, and so the 2, because they don't have any backfills, they were not qualified, so that's only me. So that was a very good chance. So I was able to get out of my role. So July, August, September, July, August, yeah, 3 months in London. I came back October, and then March I left for Tokyo. So I was able to get out of my existing role and move to another role.
So how many years did you work at Tokyo?
Okay. Initially, I was just supposed to stay there for 3 months to help out in the project, in the rollout of the risk project, because they had no users there. But then what happened there was, because I was on a project, the turnover was very high in Tokyo. Like every week you'll see someone saying, bye, I'm going to leave now, move to another bank. And then the headhunters in Tokyo, they were very aggressive. You would always get calls like, would you like to move to another bank? And then I got that call. so one time I got the call, and then the headhunter was saying, would you like to explore moving to Lehman Brothers? Lehman Brothers, the bank that collapsed.
Yes.
So they collapsed September. That was around May. Okay. So, and then I was like, can I just try and see if I will qualify for for another investment bank? So I tried applying. So fortunately, they liked me, and then they gave me a job offer. And I was like, do I want to move to Lehman Brothers, or do I want to stay in Deutsche Bank?
Yes.
So I thought of a good idea. I said, why not just say, I have an offer from Lehman Brothers, but I don't want to go there.
Yes.
Can I just move to Deutsche Bank Tokyo instead, and not go back to Manila? So I told my friend in Tokyo, and then I was gonna talk to my manager first. But then my friend squealed it to the director, and the director phoned up my manager, and my manager calls him, what are you doing? You're supposed to be working on your project, what are you doing? I was like, oh no, and I was really crying because my plan was to talk to my manager first, and my manager felt betrayed. Obviously, she would feel bad because of what I did. I mean, she learned it from somebody else, from the director, no less. The director told her, if she's going to resign, we'll just get her. So would you be willing to give her to us? But then at that time, at that time, DKS is the local company. They were just starting with their policies, and those issues were already cropping up. So the question was, would they allow me to move to an onshore location? Would that be a good precedent for other employees? So at that time, they were just coming up with this mobility program, but they said that it's only for employees who have worked for at least 2 years. And I was only with DKS for maybe about a year.
Yes.
So I was escalated up to the managing director of DKS. And so we had this conversation. It's like, I hear you are this employee who was sent to Tokyo to do this project, and now you're leaving. So to cut the story short, we made a deal.
Yes.
So he told me, you've only stayed for a year. If you want to move to Deutsche Bank Tokyo, you have to work for 1 more year. But then if you cannot wait any longer, here's a deal. We will send you back there for 6 months, only for 6 months. Work there receiving the local salary, which really, well, your 1 year salary in the Philippines is equivalent to 1 month of working in Tokyo, and you are just doing the same job. So that's the salary arbitrage that multinational companies are doing. That's why they're moving some of their processes here, because wages here are very low.
So when and where was the point when you felt like giving up your job?
May, when I was given the offer,
The
Lehman Brothers, I was supposed to return to Manila, I think June. So before I left for Manila, I was already having this conversation. And then my manager told me, okay, here's my, I'd like to ask you to, don't accept first the offer, let's talk about it when you get back here. So I returned to Manila. And then I had that deal with the managing director of DKS. So they sent me back to Tokyo. So I had to turn down the Lehman Brothers offer, which was a good move because months after, they collapsed. So yeah, that was June. September, they filed for bankruptcy. So I returned to Manila and then I was sent back to Tokyo as a local hire. So my contract was for 6 months. And then it was extended for another 3 months. So working there, it was really hard because I was only trained for simple products, simple financial products in London, like stocks, options, futures. When I went to Tokyo, well, first we have the language barrier. The traders were Japanese, but there were some Caucasian traders as well. But their products were very complex. And I was sent there with this expert packaging. Like Manila said, this is our expert in risk. So you have to live up to the package that you're an expert. And then when I attended the first few meetings, like, what is going on? I don't understand what they're talking about. And then when I go back to my apartment, I will really cry. I will really cry because I don't know what to do. And there was a time when, because in Tokyo, the regulation is very strict. So your risk reports, every day you have to go to the trading floor and you have to get the head trader to sign it to you, physical, as in physical sign off. London, we just email and they just email us back or give us a phone call. But there, you have to show your face and then give the paper and then wait for the signature. So every day I would go up to the trading floor. And my first encounter with the head trader, because these guys are really very busy and they don't lie. They're very impatient because they lose money, every minute that they don't look at their monitors. So you have to make sure that the time you go there, your reports are okay, they're accurate, and they're ready to be sent. So when he looked at my report, he threw this is wrong. Whoa. And all the guys, it's like an all-male floor. Maybe 10 women were there, and they were looking at me like that. It's like, oh, I want to melt here. This is wrong. And then I told him, sorry, but I don't see the details of your report, because they usually give us a number. Say, my risk is like this, and then I will tell him, oh no, what we're seeing is this. So I tell him, how can I reconcile because I don't see the details of your report? And then he comes back and says, so what do you want me to do? Do your job? Reconcile for you? So it's like, no, that's not what I mean. It's like, okay, you want to see the details? I'm gonna send you my spreadsheet. So, okay, send me my spreadsheet. So I thought it's like, okay, at least I can see the details. When he sends me his spreadsheets, they were like, what is this? Like, have you seen an Excel spreadsheet? It's like just 20 tabs of what is this? So I was looking at the spreadsheet and I could not understand anything. Like, so you see some symbols here, like formulas, complicated formulas, because they were doing their valuation in the spreadsheets. Like they model a product using the spreadsheets, and the spreadsheet was getting all sorts of information from Reuters, Bloomberg, etc. So, and my computer was not that powerful. These traders, they have powerful computers. So when I saw the spreadsheets, like, whoa, and I just didn't know what to do. It's like you're just frozen and I don't know what to do next. So I stayed in the office until maybe for 2 to 3 days. I would stay in the office until 12 midnight, and then I will take a cab, go home, and I will just cry in my apartment because when when you wake up in the morning, you dread going to the office because you don't know what to do. And then finally, of course, I asked for help from some of my colleagues. Finally, slowly, I got to understand. You also do need to do a bit of research from the internet, etc. So after 3 days, hi, this is my daughter. Yes, after 3 days, I was able to. I think I was able to find something. So I made a report. So I told him, I think this is where the difference is coming from. And luckily, he was convinced. So from then on, every time I would go there, he would just sign my reports. Up to a point that there were times when I would do some, there would be some mistakes. But then he would not notice because he just signs. And then he will just phone me up. I think we made a mistake. So but it's okay. It will just come back tomorrow. So our relationship went well with the traders in the trading floor in Japan. So going back, what was your question again?
When was the point where you felt when you just like
I
want to give up or something?
Yes. Actually, I enjoyed my stay in Japan, and when I was extended for 3 months, when it was about to end, the director was asking me like, "Would you like to extend? Would the Manila office allow me to be extended in Tokyo?" So those were the questions I was thinking about. Then the personal story, my personal journey comes in, because at that time, my boyfriend, his brother, was already thinking about proposing, and I had no idea that he was already thinking about proposing. So when he proposed, I knew that I had to go back to the Philippines. Maybe I will still work, but then I knew that that was the end of my country hopping plans. If he did not propose, I was actually thinking of moving to another country. So while working in Japan, when you're working, you have to establish networks. That's very important. So while I was in Japan, I was already establishing networks with colleagues that I've worked with from other countries like Singapore, and I also had some friends in New York and in London. So, and then, the one who could potentially hire me was in Singapore. So I said like, if you do not like your job anymore, just let me know, I'll find a way for you to move here. So those were my options. But when he proposed, I knew that um, it wouldn't work that way, because because personally, my personal belief, when you get married, I'm still of the traditional style. When you get married, a woman should submit to the husband. So the clincher is, you have to look for a husband you're willing to submit to. So, and you have to look for a husband whose dreams you're willing to share in. So Ryan was like that. We started way back in college, and I knew him. I knew his passions, and when he proposed, I knew I had to give up my career and support him wherever he wants to go. So initially, he told me that I can still work. So I moved back to the Manila office and then tried to see what I can do there. I enjoyed. I moved to another role. I started to do project management. So I stopped being a controller and worked on improving systems, financial systems. But then I became pregnant, and then it turned out that my pregnancies were delicate. The first one was a miscarriage. The second one was a delicate pregnancy. So I had to stop working. So that was the end of my short-lived career in investment banking. But it was all good. I mean, I enjoyed the experience. I guess the takeaway there is the what gives you value is the opportunity to work with different kinds of people, and how you'll work with different kinds of people. Like when I went to my project management job, people were warning me, you're gonna have a hard time with Indians, because the Indians, they were our IT support. So I had to work with them because we were looking at improving the financial system platforms. So they were really like, at first, you don't like working with them. But then once you get to know like what makes them feel good, like what will make them work, wholeheartedly, then the relationship becomes
good.
okay. Yeah, and they will and it came to a point that even if it's not part of their job, if you ask them and the relationship is good, they will do it for you. Like anything you ask, we will do. So, so I guess that's the key there when you're in a multinational company. Yeah, you have to know how different cultures work and adjust. of course, without sacrificing your principles. So there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you also.